Hey guys, tonight we are slipping into the leafy, wine-stained shadows of ancient Greece to follow a satyr, a half-goat, half-man creature, who just might have been the first soul on record to suffer a truly legendary hangover. You're going to wander bleary-eyed through olive groves, trip over lyres in the dark, and meet deities who really need to learn about hydration. You'll feel the weight of a grape-heavy headache, try folk remedies, both questionable and goat-based, and get just close enough to the Oracle of Delphi to wish you hadn't asked. You'll also get very, very lost, emotionally and geographically. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love seeing sleepy listeners from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up face down in dewy grass. There's a flute next to your face, one sandal missing, and a goat chewing cud about 6 inches from your ear. The good news? You're still technically alive. The bad news? Your skull feels like it was used in last night's percussion ensemble. You're not sure where you are, but there are fig trees nearby and the distant sound of someone snoring in a bush. You sit up slowly, groaning like a tragic chorus member who missed their cue. Something sticky is in your hair. It might be honey. You hope it's honey. To your left is a satyr, blissfully asleep in the fetal position, one hoof twitching every few seconds. His name, you vaguely remember, is something like Mykonos, or Mopsos, or maybe Kevin. You'll call him Mopsos until corrected. His wine cup is still half full. Typical. Now, the satyr is a party professional. His job, if you could call it that, is to frolic, drink wine, play music, and chase dryads in a manner just legally distinguishable from harassment. You somehow got roped into one of his Dionysian excursions, and now here you are, wine-stained, sore, and possessing vague memories of dancing with a talking tree stump named Yorgos. You try to stand, but immediately reconsider. The sky is too loud. Your brain feels like a small animal is rearranging the furniture inside it. You squint at the satyr. He's beginning to stir. Mopsos blinks groggily, scratches an ear, and smiles. "Ah, good party, huh?" he croaks in a voice that sounds like sandals on gravel. "You remember the fire jumping contest?" You do not. He chuckles. "You got 3rd place, out of 2. You groan and flop back onto the grass. This is your life now. Welcome to post-revelry Greece. A little background, since you clearly need it. Dionysian feasts were a big deal. Dionysus, the god of wine, theater, and general unhinged behavior, was worshipped with wild festivals that could last for days. Music, dance, feasting, these weren't just distractions. They were sacred chaos. And you, bless your mortal bones, joined in with the best of intentions. Historians still argue whether Dionysian festivals were public rituals of liberation or glorified excuses to wear ivy crowns and forget your responsibilities. Either way, you definitely forgot your responsibilities. And possibly your pants. The ancient Greeks weren't shy about indulgence, but they weren't clueless about consequences either. Clay tablets mention morning-after remedies, fig leaf tea, vinegar tonics, and cold river plunges. None of those sound particularly appealing right now. A bee lands on your face. You do not react. What's the point? Mopsos is now upright and stretching in a way that looks both painful and smug. "You'll want water," he says, tossing you a goatskin flask, "and maybe something with fennel. Fennel helps." You sniff the flask. Wine. "Of course." He grins. "Hair of the Hydra," he says cheerfully. "That's what we call it." You sip reluctantly. It's terrible, but the pounding behind your eyes eases, just a little. As you shuffle to your feet, clutching your toga like a security blanket, the sun breaks through the trees. Birds chirp mockingly. Somewhere, a lyre is playing itself. You have questions, but your mouth isn't cooperating yet. Mopsos points with a lazy hoof. "We should get back to the grove. Dionysus might still be handing out prizes." Prizes? For what? Most creative collapse? Best synchronized vomiting? You trudge forward, leaves crunching underfoot, your head pulsing in time with your footsteps. Welcome to ancient Greece's least glamorous tradition, the sacred hangover. You're living it. There's a certain serenity in the aftermath, though. The revelry is done. The fires are out. The woods feel drowsy like they partied too. A few other revelers are visible in the distance, leaning on trees, snoring into amphorae, or lying suspiciously still, probably sleeping, hopefully. Mopsos talks as you walk. He's narrating the night you can't remember. Apparently, there was a chorus competition, a grape-stomping race, and a spontaneous wedding between a mortal and a fish. No one's sure if it was legally binding. He nudges you. You know, this could be a story, you grunt. A mortal, he continues, suffers the wrath of Dionysian excess, wanders the land in search of a cure, discovers a secret recipe, and brings peace to future partygoers. You squint at him. So, me? He nods solemnly. Yes, you could be a hero, the patron saint of regret. There's a pause, and possibly flatulence. You don't have the strength to argue. Still, something about his words sticks. Maybe there is a way to soothe this cursed skull. Maybe, just maybe, you can stumble through enough trial, error, and questionable advice to invent the first real hangover cure in Greek myth. You'll need herbs, rest, possibly divine intervention, and definitely less goat. The journey begins. Step 1. Survive breakfast. You follow the satyr through a grove that smells like last night's regrets and fermented pomegranates. Sunlight filters through fig leaves above you, dappling the ground in gold and green, and reminding you that nature, while beautiful, is far too bright this early. Or late. Honestly, you've lost all concept of time. The satyr, still Mopsos, still smug, hums an off-key melody as you wade through the aftermath of a classic Dionysian revel. Empty wine jugs, shattered lyres, someone's sandal nailed to a tree. It's like a mythological fraternity party where everyone majors in tragic drama and poor decision-making. Welcome, Mopsos declares, spreading his arms, to the glorious hangover aisle. Around you are fellow party survivors in various states of disrepair. One man is asleep with a garland of olives for a pillow. Another is face down in a pile of grape skins. A third is loudly debating an invisible opponent about whether Homer was actually one guy or a brand name for bards. This is where you start learning the unwritten code of Greek forest party recovery. Eat something bland, don't make eye contact with the maenads, and whatever you do, don't ask what's in the satyr stew pot. Seriously, don't. Mopsos begins listing common satyr hangover rituals, and you follow, mostly because standing still feels like betrayal to your circulation. First stop, a pool of cool, gently trickling water that looks like a tourist brochure for inner peace. You splash some on your face, and for a fleeting moment, your soul returns from whatever dusty corner it crawled into during the wine parade. The Greeks believed water had restorative power, especially water touched by the nymphs, magical spirits of rivers, springs, and lakes. And if nymphs did anything well, it was mood lighting and skincare. Then comes food, not food as you know it, but what satyrs consider restorative delicacies. Mopsos offers you a handful of something sticky. It's a blend of dried figs, raw honey, and something that might be pine needles. You take a cautious nibble. It tastes like regret mixed with tree. But halfway through chewing, you realize you're no longer actively planning to lie down and expire. So, progress? Historians still argue whether ancient Greeks truly had a systematic approach to hangover recovery, or if they just believed you should suffer elegantly while reciting poetry. Some sources suggest bread soaked in wine as a hair of the dog tactic. Others mention using cabbage juice to cleanse the system. No source, however, supports Mopsos' current suggestion of licking a frog to reset your humors. You decline. As you wander the glade, Mopsos shares tidbits of satyr culture you somehow missed last night. For instance, did you know satyrs consider burping after a toast to be a sacred offering to Dionysus? Or that they judge dancing ability not by rhythm, but by how well you avoid tripping on ivy? You pass a tree where someone has carved, "This wine is a lie." That tracks. Now and then you catch glimpses of the other partygoers recovering in their own ways. One man balances a grape on his forehead and breathes deeply. A woman chants something rhythmic in Aeolic Greek while pressing lavender to her temples. Another satyr is meditating under a laurel bush, mumbling affirmations like, "I am not the vomit is not me." It's an ecosystem of recovery, and somehow you're becoming part of it. You finally find a rock that isn't too lumpy and sit with a groan. Mopsos flops beside you with the exaggerated sigh of someone who wants you to know how exhausted he is despite doing very little. He picks up a stick and idly draws a diagram in the dirt, a triangle labeled Satyr Hangover Protocol. Step 1, drink water that doesn't hiss at you. Step 2, eat something with honey. Step 3, complain poetically. You arch an eyebrow. That's it? Mopsos shrugs. And if that doesn't work, drink more wine. Or sleep it off under a laurel tree and hope a god whispers the cure into your ear. You stare at the sky. The sun is higher now. Bees buzz lazily around some thyme bushes. Somewhere nearby, a flute hits a sour note and is quickly shushed by a hungover priestess. Why do you guys party this hard? You mutter. Mopsos laughs. Because we're celebrating chaos. Life. Joy. The delicious terror of waking up and realizing you may have invented a new dance move that offended 6 deities and a tortoise. That sounds about right. But a thought itches at the back of your mind. An odd little detail from last night. You vaguely remember someone talking about figs and fermentation. A heated argument about whether pickled onions were medicinal or just disrespectful to onions. There might have been a song involved. Your head still pounds, but there's something underneath it now, a spark, an idea. What if there is a better way to recover from divine-level overindulgence? You turn to Mopsos. What's the worst hangover you've ever had? He doesn't hesitate. That time Dionysus made us drink wine filtered through his ceremonial sandals. You stare at him. It tasted like ambition, he says, and shudders. And yet, he survived it. Maybe the answers lie deeper in Satyr lore. Or worse, in Greek medicine. Either way, you're beginning to suspect that this hangover might be the start of something bigger than just you. A flute and one increasingly judgmental goat. You groan and lie back in the grass. The sky is less offensive now. The trees sway like they're nodding in agreement. And somewhere, a distant satyr shouts, I think I found my spleen. You close your eyes. The cure is out there. Probably. You wake up for the second time today, which feels excessive, but at least this time your face isn't pressed into something sticky. The headache has mellowed from a gong to a tambourine. Progress. Mopsos is already awake, because of course he is. Satyrs apparently metabolize wine through sheer smugness. He's sketching in the dirt with a twig, something that looks suspiciously like a digestive tract, or possibly a satyr doing yoga. We need to talk to Thea, he says with a grin that promises mischief. She's a priestess, knows herbs, doesn't like me. You squint at him. Why not? Because I once mistook her sacred incense burner for a snack bowl. That checks out. Thea, as it turns out, lives in a modest stone hut tucked into the side of a gentle hill, shaded by olive trees and surrounded by the overwhelming smell of things that probably help, but you don't want to know why. Vines crawl up the walls, and wind chimes, made from bone and seashells, tinkle softly, like the nervous laughter of people trying essential oils for the first time. You trudge behind Mopsos, still clutching the last of your dignity like it might run off if you loosen your grip. The satyr bounds ahead and raps on the door with his hoof. Thea answers, wearing a robe the color of thyme leaves and an expression that could curdle goat's milk. You, she says flatly to Mopsos. Good morning to you too, priestess of pungency, he says, bowing dramatically. She turns to you. You look like you've been chewed and reoffered to the gods. Thank you, you croak. Thea studies you both, then sighs. Come in, but don't touch anything that hums. Inside, her hut is a museum of smells. Dried herbs dangle from the rafters in bushels. Sage, mint, lavender, fennel, some unidentifiable curly thing that looks like a question mark and smells like foot. Bowls of crushed roots and pestled powders line the shelves. There's a mortar the size of a watermelon, stained purple. Thea hands you a cup filled with something greenish. It steams ominously. Drink, she commands. You sniff it. It smells not bad, actually, like licorice and regret. You sip. It's hot, bitter, and instantly makes you aware of your spleen. But within seconds, your vision sharpens slightly. The fog behind your eyes begins to lift. Fennel and anise, she says, with a dash of celery seed and a scolding. You nod. Tastes like discipline. Good. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek medicine leaned more on practical herbal remedies or just really confident guesses delivered while holding a stick. The famous physician Hippocrates, a century or so later, would systematize a lot of what people like Thea already knew intuitively. The idea of balancing humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, wasn't quite formalized yet, but Thea clearly has a working theory. If you smell like oregano and cry a little, you'll feel better. She plunks a scroll down in front of you. These are recipes from my grandmother. She was half nymph, half apothecary, lived to be 142. You blink. Did she invent something? She invented a poultice that could make a Spartan cry. We called it the Olive of Oblivion. Mopsos leans in, curious. Any hangover cures? Several, she says, flipping the scroll. Though most require ingredients that are either banned by the Oracle or illegal in 3 city-states. Define illegal, Mopsos asks. She ignores him. Instead, she hands you a small clay tablet. Etched crudely on it is a recipe involving mint, goat's milk, myrtle berries, and something called Dracon's Whisker. What's that? You ask. Extinct, she says casually, but we substitute with celery and hope. Thea begins assembling a brew while explaining the medicinal properties of each ingredient. Mint for clarity, goat's milk for soothing the stomach, myrtle to balance the spleen's gossip, whatever that means. You nod as if this makes sense. At this point, you'd drink a scroll if she handed it to you with enough confidence. Mopsos sniffs at a bowl. What's this? Crushed wild garlic. He recoils. It smells like vengeance. That's the point. The tea brews. The hut fills with steam and a surprising hint of rosemary. You sip again, and this time your stomach doesn't lurch in protest. Your limbs stop threatening to detach out of protest. It's not a full recovery, but it's the closest you felt to human, or whatever you are, in hours. You look at Thea. How do you know all this? She shrugs. I watch. I listen. I don't spend my evenings passed out under fig trees. Tache, Mopsos pouts. One time. Okay, 12. Before you leave, Thea gives you a small leather pouch. Inside are dried herbs and a bit of chalk with symbols drawn on it. Steep this when your head tries to explode, she says, and avoid fermented eel. Trust me. Outside, the sun is high, and you feel almost functional, like your organs are back in agreement. You breathe deeply, and the air smells like time and the distant possibility of ambition. Mopsos stretches. So, now what? You stare into the distance. We find more. Better? A cure that works no matter how much you drank or how many satyrs dared you to dance on a beehive. He winces. Hey, that was an accident. Mostly. The journey continues. There are rumors of a healing fig grove in the next valley, and someone mentioned a traveling spice trader who swears by cinnamon-soaked olives. You're not sure what awaits, but you know this much. You've officially begun your quest to become the first person in recorded myth to conquer the morning after. Mopsos claps you on the back. You know, he says, if this works, we'll name it after you. You nod slowly, and silently pray they don't call it the regret tonic. You and Mopsos trudge down a dusty path that may or may not be an old goat trail. It's hard to tell. Everything out here looks like it's either been walked on by hooves, sandals, or divine feet you're not supposed to question. The air is thick with the scent of hot earth and wild oregano. In the distance, cicadas buzz like nature's hangover alarm clock. After Thea's tea, you're not fully restored, but you're no longer actively bargaining with the gods to make it stop. So, again, progress. Your next destination, according to Mopsos' questionable grapevine of forest gossip, is a hidden grove where healing figs grow. Supposedly, they only ripen in moonlight and only fall into the hands of those who have truly learned their lesson. Which might explain why Mopsos has never tasted one. Fig wisdom, he mutters, is vastly overrated. You side-eye him. You once got into a philosophical debate with a tree. It was winning. You walk in silence for a bit, the path dipping into cooler shade. As you descend into a forest glade, the soundscape shifts. Less chirping, more rustling. The grove is surrounded by twisted old fig trees, their branches drooping like sleepy limbs. Some are tied with ribbons. Others have little offerings tucked in the roots, bits of honeycomb, feathers, polished stones. It's sacred in the way that makes your feet slow without being told to. At the center stands an old man in a toga so stained it might have started white in the Bronze Age. He has eyebrows like woolly caterpillars and a cane shaped like a question mark. You seek the figs, he says without looking up. You blink. Yes, he gestures vaguely. They fall when ready. Sit until they do, or don't. Time is flexible here. You and Mopsos take a seat on a warm patch of moss. It's surprisingly comfortable, peaceful, possibly enchanted. The old man doesn't say much, but he hums, a slow hypnotic tune that somehow encourages your stomach to stop staging protests and your knees to forgive you. Mopsos leans over and whispers, "This guy might be Philetos. Rumor says he used to party with Dionysus before he went full hermit and got into plant whispering." You nod slowly. So, fig oracle? Figletos, Mopsos suggests with a smirk. You groan. As you wait, the old man suddenly mutters, "Did you know ancient physicians believed figs promoted digestive harmony and could restore lost vigor?" You perk up. "They did?" He nods sagely. "And that when mixed with goat cheese and thyme, they were believed to banish melancholy and sluggishness of the spleen." You turn to Mopsos. "Everyone's obsessed with spleens." "It's a very emotional organ," he replies solemnly. Historians still debate whether figs in ancient Greek medicine were truly curative or just easy to grow and tasty enough to justify their use in absolutely everything. Aristotle claimed they strengthened the heart. Galen, later on, used them in poultices. And the general public believed in their magical properties, especially when paired with honey or left overnight beneath a statue of Apollo. Eventually, a soft plop breaks the silence. A fig has fallen. It lands directly in your lap. The old man nods. "Accepted." Mopso's jaw drops. "I've been coming here for 12 years, and all I got was a falling acorn to the forehead." You pick up the fig reverently. It's warm, oddly firm, and gives off a faint glow. Or maybe that's the sunstroke. You take a bite. It's incredible. Sweet, yes, but with an herbal depth that feels like you're tasting something older than time. Your head clears even more. The residual nausea? Gone. Your spine? Reconsidering its stubborn tilt. You almost expect a choir of muses to start humming. Mopso snatches one that falls nearby and bites it. He chews for a moment. Tastes like disappointment and raisins. This is rigged. You thank the old man, who waves a hand like swatting away a fly made of gratitude. Your journey continues. The cure is not one fruit or tea, but the path itself, and possibly cumin. You leave the grove a little straighter in the spine, a little clearer in thought. The sky seems bluer, the birds less offensive. As you walk, Mopsos mutters, maybe we're not just curing hangovers. Maybe we're rediscovering ancient balance, a sacred ritual for recovering from bad decisions. You nod, or at least making the bad decisions taste better the next morning. He chuckles. You've got Thea's pouch, fig wisdom. Your spleen is no longer whispering threats. But the road stretches on, and there are whispers of a city whose philosophers dabbled in anti-drunkenness elixirs brewed under starlight. Next stop, philosophical nightlife. And hopefully somewhere to nap that isn't under a judgmental goat. By the time you reach the outer edges of the next city-state, your legs ache in that classic, "Did I walk or was I lightly cursed" way. The sun hangs lower now, casting golden streaks across crumbling columns and quiet courtyards. You've arrived in a place locals call Safronica, a city renowned, allegedly for moderation, balance, and the rare ability to host an all-night symposium without a single person ending up in a fish barrel. "It's boring," Mopsos says, with a grimace. Unnaturally so. Once saw a man here politely decline a second olive. But boring, in your state, is perfection. You pass under an archway carved with figures of philosophers, some holding scrolls, others holding wine cups, upside down. A silent warning, perhaps. The streets are cobbled and surprisingly clean. There are no market criers yelling about goat cheese deals, no flute players desperately auditioning for recognition. Just soft wind, so the occasional clink of ceramic and distant laughter, the well-mannered, not too loud kind. You feel calm, suspiciously calm. In the main square, you spot a group of people seated on low cushions around a fountain shaped like an owl. They're drinking from small cups and discussing in low tones something about virtue in states of inebriation. One of them wears a wreath not of ivy, but of chamomile. "This is it," Mopsos whispers. "The order of the measured sip." You raise an eyebrow. "That sounds made up." "Oh, it is," he says. "But they're real." You're waved over by a woman with hair like rain clouds and eyes that say, "I've read every scroll and still think you're interesting enough to humor." She introduces herself as Lysandra. "You've come seeking the elixir of waking wisdom, haven't you?" she says. You blink. "That's actually a great name." She nods, pleased. "We brewed it once a year, during the Festival of Quiet Regrets. This, you learn, was a local tradition. The day after their annual wine-tasting symposium, citizens of Safronica would gather at dawn, share their most poetic apologies, and drink a communal tonic meant to restore clarity and suppress the urge to mail ill-advised love poems to exes. The elixir's key ingredient? Cumin seed. Ground finely and steeped with crushed coriander, lemon peel, a touch of honey, and something they call dew from the hour before dawn. Suspiciously poetic. Possibly just condensation on a leaf. Historians still argue whether cumin's popularity in ancient remedies was due to genuine medicinal properties or simply because it was everywhere and no one dared question its aggressive smell. Pliny the Elder wrote extensively about it, and Galen believed it could stimulate digestion and, oddly, improve memory. Today, modern science still can't decide whether it's a cure or just the edible version of shouting at your stomach. Lysandra leads you into a small stone building that smells of citrus and parchment. Shelves are lined with ceramic jars labeled in elegant calligraphy: clarity, restraint, mild guilt, overcompensating peppermint. From a brass kettle over low coals, she pours the elixir into tiny cups. It's pale yellow, with a fragrance both earthy and oddly comforting, like someone tried to turn a philosophy scroll into soup. You sip. It's warm, slightly spicy. It seems to slide through your bloodstream, gently straightening your posture and whispering, "You probably don't need to apologize to that tree after all." Mopsos, after downing his cup, blinks rapidly. "I just remembered where I left my sandals in 2007. You're not sure if this is enlightenment or mild cumin-related delirium, but either way, you feel better. Sharper. Less like a soggy fig and more like someone who could read a map without crying. Does it last? You ask. Lysandra shrugs. Only until you ignore your own wisdom again, which, let's be honest, could be by sundown. Fair. You chat for a while longer. The measured sip crowd tells stories of ancient thinkers who developed formulas for moderation, including one philosopher, Alcmenian, who allegedly drank by the grain, not the cup, measuring his wine intake like it was precious ink. You try not to imagine the bathroom logistics. Eventually, Lysandra hands you a parchment copy of the elixir recipe. Share it with those who seek balance, she says, but not too widely. Some prefer their misery unmedicated. Back on the road, Mopsos walks beside you, unusually quiet. After a moment, he says, "That felt nice, like I was almost a responsible creature for a second." You nod, "Almost." He grins. "Let's not let it go to our heads." Too late. Yours already feels like it's been scrubbed with lemon zest and second chances. You don't know if this tonic is the cure. But it's one more piece. A calming potion from a society of thinkers who believe hangovers are just philosophical regrets you haven't decoded yet. The map you're sketching in your mind grows more detailed. Thea's tea, the fig grove, the elixir of waking wisdom. A pattern is emerging. But to complete it, you need one final thing: a test subject who never gets hangovers. If you can learn why, maybe you can replicate it. And you know exactly who to find. Time to seek out an immortal. The trail to immortality, as it turns out, begins with a donkey cart and a misunderstanding about figs. You and Mopsos are now bumping along a dirt path in a cart driven by an old woman who keeps referring to you both as my grandchildren, even though she's clearly younger than Mopsos. "We're heading toward Mount Sipylus," he mutters. "It's where they say the wine never runs dry, the satyrs never nap, and at least one nymph has a crush on a wind god." You glance sideways. "And this immortal we're seeking? Glemos the Unthirsting." You pause. "That's not a name. That's a cautionary tale." But Mopsos is insistent. Glemos, a half-god, half-very determined partygoer, is rumored to have attended every revel of Dionysus without ever suffering a hangover. Not once. Not even when he accidentally drank a whole amphora, thinking it was water. The story goes that his liver sparkled in moonlight, and his breath always smelled faintly of lavender and defiance. Glemos hasn't been seen in public in centuries, but rumors persist that he lives somewhere near Mount Sipylus, disguised as an elderly shepherd or possibly a boulder with opinions. The donkey cart creaks to a halt beside a weathered temple ruin. Vines crawl up its columns. A statue of Dionysus grins down at you, holding a goblet that looks suspiciously refillable. At the base of the statue, someone's left a tray of grapes, 2 empty wine cups, and a scroll that reads, "Dear Glemos, I'm sorry for last year." Promising. You and Mopsos start climbing a narrow trail into the hills. The air gets cooler, pine-scented, and filled with the kind of silence that suggests either divine presence or a particularly stealthy goat ambush. Finally, you find him. Not in a temple, but reclining on a sun-drenched rock, eating olives, and looking like someone who retired from being mythological to pursue leisure full-time. Glemos is old, sure, but not decrepit. His skin has that golden olive hue that comes from centuries of sunlight and no stress. His beard is gloriously unkempt, and his eyes twinkle with eternal smugness. "You've come about the hangovers," he says without looking up. You blink. "How did you know?" "I'm very popular with desperate philosophers," he replies. Mopsos bows dramatically. "We seek your wisdom, O unthirsting one." Glemos waves him off. "Please, just Glemos. Titles are for people who still care about dinner seating charts." You sit cross-legged on the ground, trying to appear reverent but not desperate. "So," Glemos begins, "you've already had Thea's tea, the fig of balance, and the cumin elixir of Saffronica. Impressive. You're not amateurs." You raise an eyebrow. "How do you—" "I listen to the birds," he interrupts, "and the gossiping wind, and sometimes I just guess really well." He leans forward. "You want to know my secret?" You both nod eagerly. "I never rush the wine." There is a pause. You blink. "That's it," he nods solemnly. "Wine is not a race. It's a conversation. Most hangovers happen when people interrupt their own story with a jug." Mopsos whispers, "I feel deeply attacked." Glemos continues, "Also, always drink with food. Never lie down immediately after drinking." And he adds, picking up a sprig of rosemary, "Chew this." You take the herb skeptically and chew. It's sharp, peppery. Makes your brain feel like it just got spritzed with mountain air. "Rosemary stimulates memory, circulation, and prevents headaches," Glemos says. "I eat it daily, and I never ever drink wine that's been sitting out in the sun." Historians still argue whether Glemos ever existed at all. Some say he was invented by Epicureans to shame overindulgent Stoics. Others believe his real name was Glimocrates, a wine merchant who successfully branded himself into myth. But one thing's certain, his principles echo ancient Greek wisdom about moderation. Always eat with wine, rest after revelry, and favor quality over quantity. Glemos offers you both a bowl of roasted chickpeas with sea salt and a goblet of wine chilled in a spring-fed jug. "You'll be fine," he says, "because now you're aware. Hangovers hate awareness." You sip the wine slowly. It's crisp, with notes of plum and judgment. You feel it settle in your stomach, like a warm blanket folded by someone with maternal instincts and access to magic. Mopsos stares at his wine. "Do you ever get drunk anymore?" Glemos smiles. "All the time. But I choose it instead of chasing it." You don't know if that's mystical wisdom or just very well rehearsed, but it feels true. When you leave, Glemos hands you a pouch of dried rosemary and a goodbye as casual as a breeze. "Don't forget, drink the story, not just the wine." Back on the trail, you and Mopsos walk in silence for a while. Then, softly, Mopsos says, "I think we're close." "To the cure?" "To understanding it," he says. "It's not just one plant or potion, it's a pattern, a lifestyle. Tea, figs, cumin, rosemary, balance, rest, and weirdly judgmental old men." You nod, "And maybe a fan, for ambiance." Your pack is heavier now with knowledge and snacks. You're ready for the final piece. But first, you'll need to test it all. Bring the elements together, which means the ultimate field test. A party. You know it's a terrible idea the moment you hear the flute. It's dusk now, and you and Mopsos are standing at the crest of a hill overlooking a meadow that practically screams, "Someone's about to make poor decisions here." Torches flicker. Music weaves through the olive trees. There's laughter, dancing, and, oh yes, wine. Amphoras of it, lining the edges of a makeshift dance floor made of woven reeds and questionable promises. "This is it," Mopsos declares, his little goat hooves tapping excitedly. "The Festival of Dionysian Decency." You frown. "That sounds made up." He shrugs. "A little, but the party's real." You trudge down the hill toward the revelers, clutching your travel bag like it's a moral compass. Inside it, Thea's tea blend, a pouch of fig salve, that cumin elixir recipe scribbled on the back of a napkin, and a healthy bundle of rosemary, already judging you silently from the pocket. Tonight, you'll test it all. Every homemade potion, every hard-earned rule of moderation, every whispered remedy passed down from shepherd to scholar. If any night deserves a hangover, it's this one. Which means it's the perfect battlefield for your experimental cure. As you approach, someone hands you a wreath made of laurel and lavender. Another person offers you wine in a cup carved from goat horn. A third tries to teach you a dance that seems to involve aggressive shoulder movements and interpretive stumbles. You politely decline the third. The party pulses with an energy that's both chaotic and oddly ceremonial. There's a rhythm to the revelry, a tempo to the madness. You realize with a start that these people aren't just drinking, they're performing their intoxication. like it's a sacred rite, which, for Dionysian cults of the time, it kind of was. Historically, Dionysian festivals involved days of ecstatic dancing, drama performances, ritual toasts, and spontaneous poetry battles. Some cities gave workers the day off for it. Others warned against it in ominous stone tablets. Scholars still argue whether the festivals were meant to uplift the soul or just give farmers an excuse to yell at goats in verse. You settle near a small fire pit and begin prepping your strategy. First, the food. You nibble olives, chickpeas, a little barley bread soaked in oil. Then, hydration, a steady rhythm of water between sips of wine. And finally, after your second goblet, you chew a rosemary sprig like it's gum made by ancient pharmacists. Mopsos joins you, already flushed with glee. You're missing the dance of 7 amphoras, he pants. It ends with interpretive burping. I'll pass, you reply, sipping more wine, slowly. Hours pass. The music shifts from wild pipes to soft lyres. The dancers collapse in heaps of limbs and giggles. Someone's reciting a poem to a sleeping chicken. Another has painted eyes on their knees and is trying to start a philosophical debate with them. You're tipsy, but stable. Foggy, but functional. Your secret? You've been following every rule Glemos and company handed down. Sip, eat, rest. Repeat. Sip, eat, rest, repeat. At one point, someone offers you something called Liquid Olympus. You don't ask what's in it. You decline politely and pretend you're already seeing 3 centaurs. Thank you. Around you, revelers begin to wilt. The first groans of regret are heard just before sunrise. Someone is trying to make a pillow out of figs. Another keeps muttering, too much goat, too much goat. You, meanwhile, stretch. Your head hums, but it's not pounding. Your stomach's firm, not rebellious. Your mouth doesn't taste like sandal juice. In fact, you feel kind of amazing. I think it's working. You whisper. Mopsos crawls over. You're standing? That counts as a miracle. He, on the other hand, did not follow the plan. His eyes are pointing in different directions, and his tongue seems to have turned into a haiku. Tea time, you say. You boil Thea's herbal blend over the embers of the fire pit, stirring gently as steam curls into the air. The scent alone revives a few passed-out partygoers. You drink, slowly, then offer some to others. A girl who's halfway into a wine barrel accepts with a grunt. A guy using an amphora as a hat moans with relief after 2 sips. One of the older revelers leans in, eyeing the cup. What is this magic? You shrug. Just a little fig, fennel, cumin, and the lingering shame of poor choices. He raises his eyebrows. Tastes like healing. The sun crests the horizon, golden light floods the meadow. The music fades to silence. The party is over. You, however, are still upright, still clear. It's not perfection. Your feet hurt. Your head feels like it spent the night listening to pan flutes through a wall. But it's not a hangover. It's not suffering. It's the satisfying ache of a night well managed. Back at your camp, Mopsos groans into a pile of rosemary sprigs. Remind me never to ignore herbs again. You pat his back. You're part of the experiment now. You write down everything. Ratios, reactions, rhythms. The precise order. Tea before wine, fig salve after meal, cumin tonic just before the last goblet, rosemary throughout, rest before dawn. It's all there. You've done it. You've found the first working formula for an ancient Greek hangover cure. All that's left now is to test it one more time on someone else. You don't exactly advertise your success, but word gets out fast. By the end of the week, a line has formed outside your tent. It's a mix of philosophers with pounding temples, shepherds who overdid the wine and cheese part of their picnic, and at least one confused poet who claims he's trying to forget the last stanza. Mopsos, now fully recovered and wearing sunglasses made from fig leaves, stands at your side like a grumpy receptionist. Next, the patient shuffles forward. Young, sleep-deprived, wearing sandals on the wrong feet. Classic symptoms. Describe your symptoms, you say gently, scribbling in your notes. I feel like I've been headbutted by a Pegasus, he groans. You nod. Severity scale? Somewhere between mild regret and I tried to marry a tree. Perfect. You begin the treatment. First, water with a splash of fig and mint syrup, then a few olives and salted bread. A generous pinch of cumin sprinkled into warm tea, and finally, a sprig of rosemary placed delicately behind his ear for both scent and aesthetics. He gags only slightly. Within minutes, his posture improves. His breathing evens. His expression morphs from tortured statue to confused houseplant. Aye. I think it's working? Side effects may include clarity, humility, and mild respect for herbs, you reply. This continues for hours, a steady stream of the overindulged dull, the sleep-deprived, and the mythically misguided. You treat them all. Even the satyr who insists his hangover is spiritual, not physical. Word spreads beyond the village. A traveling bard pens a ballad titled The One Who Banished Regret with Soup and Leaves. You try not to let it go to your head, but it's catchy, and the chorus slaps. Then one afternoon, a courier arrives, wears gold-trimmed sandals, carries a scroll sealed with a grapevine crest. You break the seal. It's from the Temple of Dionysus. It reads, "We have taken note of your meddling with divine revelry. Come at once to explain yourself. Bring snacks." You gulp. Mopsos leans over your shoulder. Snacks. That's either a threat or a potluck. You decide to go. The Temple of Dionysus is no mere ruin. It's a sprawling complex perched on a hillside surrounded by ivy, laughter, and slightly suspicious-looking wine fountains. Inside, robed attendants bustle about, looking halfway between serious clergy and professional party planners. You're led into a marble chamber filled with cushions and incense, and one large, very unimpressed-looking priest. He introduces himself as Melanthios, high libationist and keeper of the sacred gourd. Your tea has disrupted 3 local festivals, he begins. Our donations are down. Revelers are recovering too quickly. One man claimed he remembered everything that happened during the dance of the sacred goat. That cannot stand. You try to explain. I'm not trying to ruin the party, just soften the consequences. Melanthios eyes you. The hangover is sacred. It's the divine price of pleasure. Who are you to undo divine accounting? You clear your throat. I'm not undoing it, just giving people a receipt. He doesn't laugh. Tough crowd. There's a long pause. Then, you've been summoned because Dionysus himself is curious. You blink. He's alive? Immortal, and slightly buzzed. Before you can react, you're ushered through twisting corridors until you emerge into a chamber filled with dancing shadows, echoing laughter, and a scent like wine-soaked ambrosia. At its center lounges Dionysus, loose curls, smudged eyeliner, one sandal missing. He looks halfway between a glam rock god and a lost tourist at a toga party. He gestures lazily. So, you fixed it. You swallow. I may have reduced the symptoms. He grins. Interesting. You know I invented the hangover, right? One of my best pieces. Took centuries to get the recipe just right. A dash of regret, a hint of despair, and a touch of nausea just to keep you humble. You offer a nervous smile. No offense, but your recipe was a bit intense. He laughs. A rich, echoing sound. Fair, but you did it the right way. No magic shortcuts, just herbs, ritual, intention. You honored the wine. He stands, sways slightly, and steadies himself on a satyr who may or may not be a beanbag. I'll allow it, Dionysus declares. In fact, I want a cup of that rosemary stuff. My temples are thudding like a bacchante's tambourine. You hand him a steaming cup. He sips, pauses, blinks. Oof, that's awful. Then he drains it, but effective. Dionysus waves his hand. You may continue your work. Just don't make it too easy. Regret builds character. You bow deeply. Thank you, Lord of Revels. He yawns. Send more snacks next time. As you leave the temple, Mopsos whispers, you just got divine approval for treating hangovers. That makes you, what, a prophet of moderation? You laugh. More like a traveling tea merchant with weird endorsements. Your reputation, however, is now sealed. You're not just a wanderer with a good herb pouch. You're the one who softened Dionysus's headache. And frankly, there's no going back now. Word count, away. By the time you return to the village, things have changed. Your modest tent has been replaced by a fully functioning apothecary booth, courtesy of the grateful locals. Someone's even painted a wooden sign, the Rosemary Cure, by appointment or desperation. Mopsos has taken to wearing a toga and referring to himself as Chief Recovery Officer. You let it slide. You're famous now. Or, well, folk famous. Not quite statue-worthy, but at least worthy of being offered the good cheese at dinner. The hangover cure, your strange little blend of ancient wisdom, trial and error, and herbs, is being requested all over the region. Farmers send for it before feast days, bridesmaids before weddings. Even temple acolytes want it for purely scholarly celebrations, which you suspect is code for karaoke with oracles. You do your best to meet the demand. You boil, crush, dry, steep. You whisper to rosemary sprigs like they're misbehaving interns. You tweak the recipe just slightly for each client, always testing new combinations. Some add coriander for focus, others swear by bay leaf and orange rind. One morning, a rider arrives, dusty, breathless, and holding a scroll from the scholars of Alexandria, the big library. They want your recipe. You're flattered and deeply suspicious. You write back politely, sending only the basics. No trade secrets. Just enough to keep them from experimenting with fermented leeks or, God's forbid, more squid ink. You tried it once, it was a terrible decision. Still, it's undeniable. Your humble cure is spreading. And as often happens when something useful gets popular, trouble follows. It starts with a rival. A lean, sunburnt man with a toothy smile arrives in the market one afternoon. He's dressed like someone who read half a scroll about how healers look and stopped halfway. A sash that says Herbal Hero, a necklace of garlic bulbs, and sandals with embroidered bees. His name? Calixos the Remedy King. You groan internally. Calixos claims his tonic, the Divine Detox, is far superior. Mine includes blessed minerals and the sweat of mountain goats, he proclaims. It realigns your soul while exfoliating your regrets. You try to ignore him, but people are curious. His stall plays flute music. There are sparkly sachets. One of his assistants does cartwheels. It's a problem. So naturally, a challenge is issued. A cure-off. The rules: each healer must treat 3 patients with the most disastrous post-celebration symptoms. Neutral judges, public voting. Winner gets exclusive herbal rights for the local festival season. Mopsos is horrified. This is ridiculous. Cures aren't gladiator sports. You nod. True. But if he wins, people will be putting goat sweat in their ears again. You accept. The day of the cure-off arrives with too much fanfare. There are streamers. There's a man selling I Survived the Cure-Off tunics. Somewhere, someone's grilling figs. You face off against Calixos in the center of the agora. 3 patients are wheeled in, groaning, sweating, and regretting every decision made in the last 12 hours. Perfect. Calixos goes first. His process is dramatic. There's incense, chants. At one point, he rubs a pebble on someone's forehead and yells, "Be gone, inner wine demon." Your turn is quieter. You serve warm rosemary tea, a slice of flatbread, and a salve of cumin and honey dabbed gently on the temples. You let each patient rest under a lavender-drenched cloth. You speak softly. You hold their hand if they flinch. When the judging begins, it's, decisive. Patient 1 opens their eyes and mutters, "I feel like a person again." Patient 2 asks for a recipe. Patient 3 gives you a thumbs up, then promptly falls asleep on their feet. A good sign. Calixos' patients, meanwhile, are jittery. One is reciting his childhood in reverse. Another seems to have developed the hiccups of a distressed pigeon. The crowd cheers. The judges nod. And Calixos, ever the showman, bows and says, "Well played. Your rosemary reigns supreme." You thank him, then offer him a cup of your tea. He drinks. His eye twitches. "Why does it taste like discipline?" You smile. "Because it is." After the cure-off, your reputation is sealed. Not just as a hangover healer, but as someone who does things properly, gently, thoughtfully, with humor, herbs, and humility. People begin to leave little gifts at your door: embroidered napkins, dried flowers, poems about their now nonviolent mornings after. Mopsos even starts offering classes, Satyr-supported sobriety, complete with a theme song. You pretend not to like it, but secretly, you hum it when no one's around. Still, you're not satisfied, because while the cure is working, it's not perfect. Some people recover slower. Others complain about the taste. A few say they still feel foggy hours later. You know what this means. More testing, more tweaking, more wandering. There's a world of plants out there still waiting to be brewed, chewed, or turned into surprisingly soothing paste. You've come far, but the hangover horizon stretches on. And you're ready for the next cup. Word count. You leave the village quietly as usual. No fanfare, just a wave from Mopsos, who's now fully embraced his role as the unofficial mascot of your movement. He hands you a fresh sprig of rosemary and says, "In case the next drunk forgets what planet they're on." You pocket it with a smirk. The road ahead is dusty, familiar, and somehow still unpredictable. You follow a meandering goat path into the hills, guided more by instinct than itinerary. If you had a map, it would probably just say, "Here be headaches." A few days later, you reach a sleepy coastal town where the olives are suspiciously large and the local accent sounds like every word is being sung half a note flat. Perfect. Your first patient arrives before you even unpack. She's the town baker, with flour in her hair and bags under her eyes the size of amphorae. Wedding, she explains. Too much mead. Too many toasts. I woke up spooning a wheel of cheese and reciting my vows to a rolling pin. You nod solemnly. Textbook case. You hand her a new infusion you've been experimenting with. Rosemary, yes, but now with lemon rind and a whisper of fennel. She grimaces, then sighs, then smiles. It's like my brain just ironed itself out. That night, you scribble in your worn scroll. Fennel is possible clarity boost. Test again. Also, avoid rolling pins in wedding rituals. The days become a pattern. Explore, observe, treat, refine. You test different regional herbs, thyme, bay leaf, even something called wild beard moss, which sadly just made people burp in cursive. You talk to old herbalists who share secrets between sips of fig wine. You barter for rare spices. You even consult a priest who swears his insomnia was cured by sniffing melted beeswax, but that one feels spiritually dubious. One afternoon, you attend a local festival. Nothing fancy, just music, dancing, wine, and more food than is structurally reasonable. You sip water, watch, take notes. You know what's coming. Sure enough, the next morning, half the town is curled up like regret-flavored pretzels. You go to work, but something odd happens. They ask for your help not just to undo the headache, but to understand it. What does rosemary do exactly, one woman asks, sipping carefully. Is it magic? You smile. Not magic, just old knowledge and stubborn curiosity. Feels like magic, she mutters. So you begin teaching. Little by little, village by village, you become not just a healer but a teacher, a guide. A walking seminar in Why Drinking Like a Satyr Requires Drinking Tea Like a Grown-Up. You host sleepy workshops under olive trees. Children pretend to be herbal brewers, mashing imaginary leaves. Elders argue over whether cumin or chamomile helps more with wine regret wrinkles. You love every moment, and gradually, something shifts. You're no longer the sole keeper of the cure. People start adapting it, personalizing it, passing it on. You hear of variations, some brewed with lavender for sleep, others infused with mint for long sea voyages. It spreads like wisdom is meant to, quietly, respectfully, with the occasional mildly sarcastic label. One day, while resting near a vineyard, a familiar figure approaches. It's Calixos. He's wearing a less ridiculous sash now. Remedy King has been replaced with Certified Tea Apprentice. He bows slightly. Thought I'd check in, he says. Tried your fennel trick, added ginger. I call it the memory mop. You chuckle. Catchy. Terrible name, but catchy. You share a cup. It's not bad. He confesses something, too. I used to think the hangover was punishment. Now I think it's just your body trying to say next time, maybe pace yourself. You raise your cup. To listening. He toasts back. To rosemary. The next morning, you find a gift outside your tent. A scroll wrapped in ivy. You unroll it to find a beautifully illustrated recipe journal, filled with sketches of herbs, patient stories, and space to write more. It's unsigned, but you recognize the handwriting, Mopsos. Inside the front cover, a note. To the one who cured regret, 1 cup at a time. May your tea always be warm, your patience slightly less foolish, and your herbs only mostly bitter. You laugh, then cry a little. Then go find more fennel, because the truth is, your journey isn't ending. It's just growing roots. And like rosemary itself, it thrives in strange places. You've walked dusty miles, brewed questionable herbs, survived goat sweat charlatans, and somehow emerged not only respected, but surprisingly wrinkle-free, for someone who spent the better part of a year surrounded by hungover humanity. But this next place is different. You arrive at a mountain village so high up it feels like the clouds have moved in just to say hello. The people here are few, their customs quiet, their wine strong enough to remove barnacles from a ship's hull. They call it sky juice. You discover this the hard way, after politely accepting a celebratory cup at a welcome feast, then waking up 12 hours later with one sandal missing and a vague memory of trying to convince a hawk to invest in a herb startup. You sit up, groaning. This is no ordinary hangover. Naturally, you take notes. Your hands tremble as you reach for your herbs, but you try something new. Wild thyme, the scraggly kind that grows between rocks, soaked juniper berries, and a pinch of crushed salt. You sip the brew, lie back, and wait. 20 minutes later, your vision stops shimmering like a heat wave. You can form sentences again. You apologize to the hawk, and thus begins your deep dive into mountain-grade hangovers, an entirely new species. The villagers, polite but bemused, are used to treating overindulgence with long naps and silently judging whoever's still wearing grape stains by sunset. You offer your help. At first, they decline. Then one of the elders tries your brew after a feast and reports, in stunned tones, "I can feel my knees again." That opens the floodgates. Soon, you're holding daily tea talks, where villagers bring in herbs, roots, and the occasional mystery mushroom. You try each cautiously, preferably with a pillow nearby. One especially lively concoction makes you speak fluent goat for an hour. You name it, nope leaf. Through this, you learn something important. Altitude affects everything. Even the humble rosemary seems to gain a stronger scent up here, sharper and more grounding. You adapt your blend, adding altitude-hardened lavender and the tiniest sliver of mountain mint. The result? A cure so crisp it feels like your thoughts are air-dried. People start calling it Sky Blend. You like the name. It's got drama. And here, for the first time in your travels, you begin to feel settled. You wake to cool mist and the soft clang of goat bells. You write notes by firelight. Mopsos occasionally sends scrolls via traveling merchants, filled with updates and doodles, usually of satyrs sipping tea with pinkies out. You even grow your own herb patch, guarded by a surprisingly territorial marmot. But of course, the peace doesn't last, because one day, a delegation arrives, not from the next village or a market town, but from the city, the big one. Marble columns, philosophers in sandals, dramatic pigeons, Athens, and they're here on official business. "Word of your remedy has reached the symposium," says their leader, a woman named Callista, whose robes are so crisp they could slice bread. "We would like you to present it, publicly." You blink. "You want me to lecture philosophers about hangovers?" She nods. "They've earned it. You can't argue with that." So you pack your scrolls, say farewell to the marmot, he ignores you, of course, and begin the journey to the city that birthed democracy, drama, and disastrous wine-fueled debates. Along the way, you stop in villages and towns, collecting stories and updates. Everywhere you go, people have heard of the cure. Some have modified it. Some have added poems. One village sings a lullaby while brewing it. It's surprisingly catchy. By the time you reach the marble gates of Athens, you're no longer just a wandering herbalist. You're a movement. And your destination? The Symposium of Philosophers, where the hungover minds of the ancient world await your arrival with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for fresh olives or gossip about Zeus's latest romantic debacle. You take a deep breath. It's time. You stand at the edge of the symposium hall, clutching your satchel of herbs like a child might hold a teddy bear before a thunderstorm. In front of you, marble columns, sunlight bouncing off bronze statues, and a crowd of toga-clad thinkers arguing about whether reality is real or just poorly labeled. Someone sneezes. Someone else quotes Plato. A third person sneezes and then quotes Plato, just to stay competitive. You're ushered inside by Callista, whose scroll-perfect posture suggests she's never once fallen asleep in an olive press. "They're excited," she says. "Most of them drank too much last night preparing for your presentation." You raise an eyebrow. "That was thoughtful of them." She nods gravely. "Philosophy demands sacrifice." The hall is packed. You take the stage, a large flat stone surrounded by benches, the kind of place where reputations are made or unravel like bad cheesecloth. The audience is a living mosaic. Clean-shaven statesmen, bearded dreamers, one guy who appears to be asleep but might just be meditating with enthusiasm. You clear your throat. "Hey guys," you begin. Today, we're going to talk about the very human act of waking up and regretting your choices." A few chuckles, one snort, good start. You explain your journey, the satyrs, the bad decisions, the better remedies. You describe the rosemary, the lemon peel, the wild thyme that grows in crevices where only goats and consequences roam. And as you do, a quiet falls over the crowd, not from boredom, you checked, but from interest, because they know that feeling too. You talk about balance, the dance between indulgence and wisdom, the ancient roots of herbal healing, passed down not through pompous lectures, but through grandmothers and slightly judgmental goats. Someone raises a hand. "Is there a metaphysical dimension to the hangover? A punishment from Dionysus, perhaps?" You nod thoughtfully. "Historians still argue whether Dionysus invented wine to liberate humanity or to prank us eternally." They laugh. You roll into a recipe demonstration. Crushing rosemary, describing the scent, explaining the alchemy of steeping versus boiling. You pass around samples. A few sniff. One man weeps quietly and mutters, "It smells like not making terrible choices." Another asks, "Why rosemary?" You reply, "Because it grows even when nothing else wants to. It thrives in poor soil, under hot suns, and around people who swear they'll never drink again. They like that." And then come the debates. Oh, the debates. One philosopher proposes that hangovers are necessary for moral development. Another claims they are proof the body has a soul, and that the soul is petty. You mostly nod and sip water. The crowd begins to relax. Jokes fly. Someone brews a pot right there in the hall. The scent drifts through the marble air like an invisible blanket. You sit back and watch your creation take root in the most unlikely place, among the overthinking elite. Later that day, Callista finds you sitting on a bench in the agora, barefoot and munching on honeyed figs. "They loved it," she says. "They're already arguing over who discovered you." You shrug. "Tell them it was a goat named Bernard." She pauses. "Was it?" "No, but it'll keep them busy for hours." You're offered a stipend to stay, a marble bench with your name on it, possibly a statue, but you decline, kindly, because this isn't the end. You can feel it in your sandals. There are still hangovers to soothe, still herbs to meet, still villages out there with no clue that fennel could save a wedding. You leave Athens with a heart full of gratitude and a satchel full of new ingredients, including one rare spice that a philosopher swore could prevent both headaches and awkward conversations. You don't believe him, but you're willing to test it on Calixos. As you walk out of the city, a child runs after you and hands you a folded parchment. Inside is a sketch of you sipping tea under a tree with the caption, "The one who made regret bearable." You fold it carefully and tuck it into your scroll case, because that's the legacy you never expected, but maybe always needed. You emerge from Athens with new determination, your satchel a tapestry of herbs, scrolls, and souvenirs. The road feels alive under your feet, pulsing with stories untold and headaches yet to be soothed. Somewhere between the dust and the horizon, you decide it's time to refine the formula, once and for all. Your first stop is a shaded grove near an ancient temple dedicated to Apollo. You lay out your tools: rosemary, fennel, cumin, thyme, a drop of honey, and a small vial of dew collected at dawn. You whisper to each like they're old friends, coaxing out their secrets. Why rosemary? Because in classical Greece, students braided rosemary crowns for exams, believing it sharpened memory. No myth, just scent and magnesium working their quiet magic. Cite, turn, search 11, turn, search 16. Modern scholars still argue whether it genuinely stimulates cognition or only smells anciently regal. You say, cue the experiment. Then there's fennel. Ancient Greeks used it to soothe nerves, settle stomachs, and yes, boost endurance. Cite, turn, search 7, turn, search 16. Dioscorides lists it as a diuretic, anti-nausea, and get this, restorative for digestion when taken with cold water. Cite, turn, search 7. Historians still debate. Was it used medicinally or just too tasty to ignore? You suspect it's both. Taste tested and approved. You add cumin for its antimicrobial and diuretic power. Old Roman spice guides show it was cherished spring to soothe digestion. Cite, turn, search 18. And don't forget thyme, prized for courage and calm, another soothing ally in your ritual sixing. In your small cauldron, you steep rosemary and thyme in hot water, then stir and crush fennel seeds, cumin, a ribbon of lemon peel, and a drizzle of honey. You pause to inhale, earthy, citrusy, gentle. You taste. It's warm, subdued, like a whispered assurance after a noisy night. Historians still argue whether such blends were folk remedies or crafted by wise healers, but plenty of papyri from the 2nd century describe headaches eased by herbal necklaces or tea. Cite, turn, search 13. So you're in good company. Experiment complete. You note timings. First, rosemary cup before sleep, fennel cumin infusion upon waking, thyme lemon sip mid-morning. You leave empty cups by a fig tree as offerings. A Satyr photobomb mica may be later. By midday, your head is clearer, your steps less wobbly, the dull hum uplifted into soft clarity. You whisper to a passing nymph that she should try it after the next bacchanal. She glances but nods. Something about her posture is more upright. You pack up with urgency in your bones. This is the one, the final blend, the elegant culmination of a wandering quest. A cup that balances memory and relief. A ritual that honors the night without punishing the morning. Next stop, your lab or camp or whatever passes for one on the road, where you'll scale up, share the recipe, test it in every grogged village you encounter. The cure isn't just a collection of herbs, it's a philosophy. Sip deliberately, rest mindfully, and heal intentionally. Mopsos, waiting under a vine-draped tent, gives a thumbs up. You drink the last bit left over in your cup and feel ready for anything, even another sunrise. The road stretches long again, this time sun-dappled and flecked with wind-blown olive leaves. You walk with the slow confidence of someone who has tamed satyrs, outwitted philosophers, and discovered that hangover relief sometimes smells like roasted pine needles. You could settle, of course. Somewhere quiet, grow herbs, host workshops, sell limited edition Not Today Dionysus mugs. But something keeps your feet moving. You're following rumors now, gentle whispers about a remote coastal temple where wine rituals go so hard, even the high priest has a designated pillow pile. They say a potion is brewed there with ingredients no one outside the temple has ever seen. They also say it glows slightly and may have cured someone's hiccups for life. Naturally, you're intrigued. The journey there is less glamorous than your time in Athens. You trudge through muddy hills, stay in inns that specialize in disappointment, and at one point, barter 3 cloves and a sardine for passage across a suspiciously narrow river. Finally, you arrive at the temple. It's nestled against cliffs, facing the sea. Wind whistles through marble archways, seagulls circle like minor gods of mild chaos, and at the center, a courtyard filled with humming, chanting, and the unmistakable clink of clay goblets. You found it. They welcome you, if a bit skeptically. The high priestess, Doria, eyes your scroll case like it might bite her. "We've heard of you," she says. "The tea witch of the north." You decide not to correct her. It has a certain ring. They agree to let you observe their rituals, but you're not allowed to interfere. The potion is sacred, they say, mysterious, possibly divine. Then you see it. It's brewed in a massive bronze cauldron over a seaweed-fired flame. The ingredients are local: crushed sea grapes, wind-dried fennel pods, wild lemon zest, and a dash of something they call salt flower, a rare bloom that grows only in seaside cracks kissed by foam. You are floored. This isn't just medicine. This is poetry in a pot. You ask for a taste. They decline. You ask for the recipe. They laugh. So you wait. Days pass. You volunteer to clean pots. You listen to stories. You attend ceremonies, one of which involves dancing in robes while yelling flavors at the moon. Eventually, they warm to you. One night, Doria pulls you aside. "You really care, don't you?" she asks. You nod. "About curing people? About not waking up with your head inside a fish basket?" "Yes, deeply." She sighs. "Fine, you can watch the brewing up close. But one slip up and we feed you to the kelp." That's fair. You observe everything. The timing, the ratios, the chant that seems optional but oddly effective. You sketch. You sniff. You realize the key is in the layering, adding lemon at the precise moment the sea grapes begin to foam. Timing, like in comedy, is everything. Then comes your chance. One of the younger initiates has a rough night. Too much temple wine. Not enough self-control. He's found the next morning, wrapped in seaweed and mumbling about Poseidon's eyebrows. You offer your version of the brew. They let you. You gather the ingredients, but you add one twist. A pinch of your mountain mint from that high-altitude village where goats ran the social calendar. The result? He recovers. Slowly. Then, almost insultingly cheerfully. He asks for more. You get a high five. One priest starts composing a song, and just like that, you're back in your element. Doria hands you a pouch of dried salt flour. "We trust you," she says. "Just don't start a trend." You assure her you'll be subtle, maybe just an underground scroll club. You leave the temple by boat, the pouch tucked close, and your notes bursting with new ideas. Out at sea, the stars reflect on the water like someone spilled a jar of tiny lanterns. You sip a version of the potion you've brewed yourself, feel its warmth slide down your throat like silk, and watch the moon dance across the waves. It's not the first cure, and it won't be the last, but it might be the most beautiful. The road stretches long again, this time sun-dappled and flecked with wind-blown olive leaves. You walk with the slow confidence of someone who has tamed satyrs, outwitted philosophers, and discovered that hangover relief sometimes smells like roasted pine needles. You could settle, of course. Somewhere quiet, grow herbs, host workshops, sell limited edition Not Today Dionysus mugs. But something keeps your feet moving. You're following rumors now. Gentle whispers about a remote coastal temple where wine rituals go so hard, even the high priest has a designated pillow pile. They say a potion is brewed there with ingredients no one outside the temple has ever seen. They also say it glows slightly and may have cured someone's hiccups for life. Naturally, you're intrigued. The journey there is less glamorous than your time in Athens. You trudge through muddy hills, stay in inns that specialize in disappointment, and at one point barter 3 cloves and a sardine for passage across a suspiciously narrow river. Finally, you arrive at the temple. It's nestled against cliffs facing the sea. Wind whistles through marble archways. Seagulls circle like minor gods of mild chaos. And at the center, a courtyard filled with humming, chanting, and the unmistakable clink of clay goblets. You found it. They welcome you, if a bit skeptically. The high priestess, Doria, eyes your scroll case like it might bite her. "We've heard of you," she says. "The tea witch of the north." You decide not to correct her. It has a certain ring. They agree to let you observe their rituals. But you're not allowed to interfere. The potion is sacred, they say, mysterious, possibly divine. Then you see it. It's brewed in a massive bronze cauldron over a seaweed-fired flame. The ingredients are local: crushed sea grapes, wind-dried fennel pods, wild lemon zest, and a dash of something they call salt flower, a rare bloom that grows only in seaside cracks kissed by foam. You are floored. This isn't just medicine. This is poetry in a pot. You ask for a taste, they decline. You ask for the recipe, they laugh. So you wait. Days pass. You volunteer to clean pots. You listen to stories. You attend ceremonies, one of which involves dancing in robes while yelling flavors at the moon. Eventually, they warm to you. One night, Doria pulls you aside. "You really care, don't you?" she asks. You nod. "About curing people? About not waking up with your inside a fish basket?" "Yes, deeply." She sighs. "Fine, you can watch the brewing up close. But one slip up and we feed you to the kelp." That's fair. You observe everything: the timing, the ratios, the chant that seems optional but oddly effective. You sketch, you sniff. You realize the key is in the layering, adding lemon at the precise moment the sea grapes begin to foam. Timing, like in comedy, is everything. Then comes your chance. One of the younger initiates has a rough night. Too much temple wine, not enough self-control. He's found the next morning wrapped in seaweed and mumbling about Poseidon's eyebrows. You offer your version of the brew. They let you. You gather the ingredients, but you add one twist: a pinch of your mountain mint from that high-altitude village where goats ran the social calendar. The result? He recovers, slowly, then, almost insultingly cheerfully. He asks for more. You get a high five. One priest starts composing a song, and just like that, you're back in your element. Doria hands you a pouch of dried salt flour. "We trust you," she says. "Just don't start a trend." You assure her you'll be subtle, maybe just an underground scroll club. You leave the temple by boat, the pouch tucked close, and your notes bursting with new ideas. Out at sea, the stars reflect on the water like someone spilled a jar of tiny lanterns. You sip a version of the potion you've brewed yourself, feel its warmth slide down your throat like silk, and watch the moon dance across the waves. It's not the first cure, and it won't be the last, but it might be the most beautiful. Awaiting continue. Back on the dusty road, your sandals crunch against the gravel with quiet purpose. You're no longer just a wanderer or a herbalist, or even that mildly buzzed Satyr's assistant. You are, by some twist of myth and luck, the unofficial authority on ancient hangovers. And that, frankly, is hilarious. Your next stop is a coastal village known for its wine. Not just any wine. This place makes a blend so potent that Dionysus himself reportedly once forgot his own name after 3 cups. You arrive just as they're wrapping up their moon festival, a celebration of harvest, fermented excess, and by the smell of things, rampant next-day regret. The villagers greet you with a mix of awe and pleading. Apparently word has traveled. Some say they dreamed of a stranger with herbs and very specific instructions. One man claims his goat whispered your name. You choose not to ask follow-up questions. You're ushered to a makeshift clinic, a linen tent flapping in the breeze, filled with groaning celebrants lying on mats. Some wear laurel crowns. One has a cheese wheel as a pillow. You roll up your sleeves. With the flair of a seasoned apothecary, you brew a batch of your perfected remedy. The herbal tea simmers in a cauldron suspended over coals, its aroma weaving through the tent like a soft lullaby. You ladle out cup after cup, muttering gentle encouragements like, "Yes, sip slowly," like you're trying not to disturb a sleeping hydra, and "Don't chug this, I beg you, it's not a chariot race." The effect is swift and curious. People sit up straighter, foreheads uncrease. Someone burps contentedly and says, "I can taste color again." A child pokes their head in and exclaims, "Mama's standing." She hasn't stood since last solstice. A local healer, an elderly woman named Phaedra, approaches you skeptically. She peers into your cauldron, tastes a spoonful, and then sighs, "This is annoyingly effective." You thank her. She does not smile. As the crowd begins to recover, you teach them the ritual, how to prepare the tea, when to drink it, and, most importantly, how to resist the urge to wash it down with more wine. You leave behind bundles of rosemary, thyme, fennel, and a scroll with brewing instructions, complete with doodles of herbs in case anyone forgets what a leaf looks like. The village throws you a farewell feast. This time, they drink water, munch olives, and tell stories of the night before with surprisingly accurate memory. Someone starts calling you the gentle healer. Someone else, less poetically, calls you that tea guy. Both names stick. Before dawn, you slip away with Mopsos. The donkey has a new saddlebag filled with cured herbs, a gift from Phaedra. She claims she accidentally overharvested. She also slips in a note that reads, "Next time, teach me something I don't already know." You smile. You've made a rival, an excellent sign. As the stars fade, you recount the victories. Not grand battles or towering monuments, but full stomachs, eased headaches, and strangers who now greet sunrise with gratitude instead of groans. Historians still debate whether hangover remedies like yours were widely used, or if most Greeks just powered through on bread and shame. But the evidence, tea-stained scrolls, preserved herbal satchels, and scribbled jokes about goat breath cures, suggests a deeper truth. Even in ancient times, people looked for gentle ways to feel whole again. The road calls, but it no longer feels uncertain. You're not wandering aimlessly anymore. You're on a mission. There are temples to visit, monks to impress, and perhaps one day, a book to write. You consider calling it From Dionysus to Detox, a Practical Guide. Mopsos loudly objects. "Fine," you say. "We'll workshop the title." You walk on, the sea on your left, the sun rising to your right, and the quiet knowledge that somewhere behind you, a small village now drinks tea instead of regret. Morning spills across the horizon like a honeyed spill, warm and slow. You're following a path carved between olive groves and fig trees, one hand trailing through dew-flecked branches, the other gripping Mopsos' reins as he contemplates eating every thistle in sight. Your destination is a quiet cove once used by sea traders, now mostly seabirds and the occasional poet seeking inspiration via isolation. You've heard rumors of an abandoned shrine there, a place where libations were poured not just to honor gods, but to soothe sailors too hungover to row back out. You arrive as the tide whispers in. The shrine is real, half-collapsed, moss-covered, and serenely empty. The altar is cracked but still holds an old bronze cup. You step into the shade, lay out your ingredients, and prepare one last brew for the road. As it steeps, you think back. From that first disastrous drinking contest to becoming a reluctant herbalist legend, it's been a journey. You've outlasted curious kings, skeptical scholars, and at least one very dramatic raccoon. Don't ask. You've wandered cities and ruins, offered relief to the bleary-eyed, and taught strangers that healing doesn't have to taste like punishment. And now here you are. You pour the tea into the shrine's offering cup. Just a splash. Just enough to say thank you to the myths, the missteps, and the occasional minor miracle. Then, with a deep breath and a satisfied stretch, you lie back against the warm stone. This is the quiet part, the cool down, where the story softens. You feel the breeze tug at your cloak. Mopsos settles beside you, his braying reduced to a sleepy hum. The waves carry on without urgency. Time loosens its grip. The tea you brewed cools beside you, untouched, still steeping in salt-laced air. Historians may argue whether your hangover remedy truly changed the course of history, whether satyrs actually drank it, whether the salt flower was real or just a poetic flourish. But that's the nature of stories, isn't it? Some truth, some imagination, all mixed gently, brewed slowly, and meant to be sipped at twilight. You close your eyes, you've done what you came to do, and somewhere, just out of sight, a satyr with a headache stirs and smiles. Wind down, approx. 300 words. Let it all fade. The bustle of marketplaces, the clink of clay cups, the roar of satyrs dancing under moonlight. Let the aroma of rosemary and lemon linger like a memory, not sharp but soft, like something familiar on the edge of sleep. You've walked miles in sandals, stirred potions by starlight, and traded gossip with goats. You've sat in temples, waited in silence, and found answers in the bottom of a teacup. And now everything slows. Your breath matches the tide. In, out. Just like that. You're lying by a sea long forgotten, wrapped in a breeze that smells faintly of fennel and pine. No one's calling your name. No one needs a remedy. Not now. You're safe. You're still. You're exactly where you need to be. The world is quiet, as if even the gods are napping. Let that peace carry you. Let the rhythm of waves rock your thoughts into stillness. Let every last silly myth, every wandering step, every sip of ancient tea become part of a dream, one where you wake without aches, without weight, just warmth and calm and maybe the distant sound of a donkey snoring. Rest now. You've earned it.